Management of Water Utility Rand Water says it is concerned by the escalating wastage and consumption of water despite the intentions to address the water crisis in Gauteng. Some residents, Johannesburg suburbs in fact, have been without water for over 50 days due to low pressure attributed to load shedding, heightened consumption, leaks and burst pipes. Our reporter, Ofense Setimo, has more.
Water Utility Rand Water says it is concerned by the heightened consumption of water, especially during heated periods like now we are in the El Nino period. It also says that it's in the process of building some of the infrastructure that's actually going to capacitate it so that they're able to even feed far-flung areas like in Mpumalanga and Northwest. I am joined now by the COO, Mr. Mehlo, to elaborate a bit further on this. Thank you so much for your time, sir. You know, you are briefing us during a time when there's actually a crisis in some of the suburbs in Joburg where residents haven't had water for quite some time. What is being done to remedy that particular situation, especially at areas that are elevated?
Well, Fenze, I think as we outlined the program that we have with the metros, we meet every morning precisely to look at what can be done, and we also monitor, the sort of interventions that would have been put in place. The areas that are being referred to, of course, we can see on the news. We do discuss them in detail ourselves. Basically, what we then do is to agree on how systems can load shift water to assist the particular areas. You would have known and seen that in the recent past, a lot was said around the South Hills area. And that was a function of a system that was not necessarily coping. And we then had to say what can be done to assist that system. And I think as I speak, that area has sort of been given a lifeline. There is a lot of reprieve in the water supply in the South Hills. Similarly, there were other areas, that every day we take stock of those issues and then we plan for the day. It's a daily planning. And in the evening, we have our own internal sessions. We check what has actually worked, what didn't work. And then in the morning sessions the following day, we then regroup to say, how do we then change the strategy? But what I can say is also that the areas that are still without water compared to where we were a few weeks ago, we have seen a significant reduction of those areas. Of course, we are aware and mindful of the fact that there are still issues in certain parts of the areas. Some are localized issues that our counterparts in the metros are dealing with. Some require of us as a bulk to also intervene. But what is critical is that we act jointly and in unison.
And there was mention of about 42% of non-revenue water that actually does not reach the consumers themselves. And you mentioned that, as Rand Water, you don't do water reticulation. What can municipalities that are tasked with this particular responsibility do to reduce this particular non-revenue water from actually being wasted?
Yes, of course. I think the issue of non-revenue water is one that we all agree that is actually a problem that confronts the country. And the number of municipalities actually have outlined their programs, because in the main, when you talk about non-revenue water, there is an aspect of physical losses to it, which simply speaks to plugging the leaks. And that is not necessarily as simple as I make it sound, because in certain instances you have to replace the infrastructure, in certain instances you have to refurbish and repair the infrastructure, and all of that requires certain funding mechanisms. And we know, we are well aware of the plans that most of our municipalities have in place, and you will find that here and there are issues of funding. But there are plans, especially in the metros, because they do have capacity, they do have their own engineers and their own planners. Often than not, it becomes an issue of saying, how do we begin then to fund, these initiatives? From a departmental point of view, you will also be aware that there are grants that, that are allocated to these municipalities, and there is an exercise that is collaborated at the level of the minister to ensure that all these initiatives are actually integrated to make sure that we begin to combat, this issue of non-revenue water.
Thank you very much. Well, as you heard, that's the COO of Rand Water actually saying that in as much as there could be challenges in the province and in other places regarding water shortages, he's saying that work is actually underway to ensure that they avert a worst case scenario.